and welcome to Accountex 2024, and we're here for podcast Pitstop by Ask the Accountant, and we have a great guest lined up today. I think the best thing for you to do is explain to you who you are, why you're here, and what you do.
Hi, Aaron. Good afternoon. Well, thank you very much for having me on. My name's Simon Reed. I'm the managing director of a business called Accountants for Sale, and the clue is in the name. So we're basically a business broker. We specialise in helping accountants who are looking to sell or merge their practice with another acquirer, and we work with businesses that are looking to buy accounting firms right across the UK.
Yeah, and at the moment, it's a prevalent business model, isn't it? Because I know ourselves, we are heavily into looking for the next acquisition. Like we're acquisition at the moment. And I've got a feeling there's a lot of people doing exactly the same thing, right? So let's talk of Accountex first of all, and then we'll get back into what you're doing. So what's been your first impressions of Accountex 2024 so far?
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic show, and it's a great showpiece for the industry. I think what I've really noticed this morning is just how many of the exhibitors are software companies, and just how much of the business is now online and digital.
Yeah, and in your market, surely the more digital, the more online, the more automated, that's where the better asking prices are coming from, aren't they?
Absolutely, and I think although there are still a lot of businesses out there that operate with customers who come along once a year with a proverbial shoebox stuffed full of invoices and smelly old receipts, they are, few and far between. And I know many firms now just will refuse to deal with those the clients.
Yeah.
And equally, if you're buying a business, the last thing you want are clients that are not actually on some form of digital platform where you've got visibility of what's there.
So it's safe to say, like, the people who are coming to a place like Accountex are the people that you're most interested in, right? Because they're the ones that you can help, or you can find a buyer for, or they're the sort of clientele you're looking for, right?
Absolutely, and I think there's a lot of people that come to Accountex that are either supplying accountants and working with accountants all day long, and inevitably sometimes a conversation comes up that they're maybe looking to retire, thinking about an exit, or indeed they're young and dynamic and looking to grow and expand and take over the world. So coming to these sort of events is really important, and I often find it's who I meet in the coffee lounge, particularly if I try and sort of talk to some of the older grayer-haired people.
There's always a business to be done, a deal to be done somewhere, right?
Yeah, I've met one or two this morning already. So
I love it, love it. Okay, so what are you most looking forward to from Accountex 2024?
Well, I think really it's already happening now. It's coming on your fantastic podcast. So it's well worth making a trip to London today. I think, like most of us, it's just nice to get out in the office and meet with people face to face. And I think we're still a lot of exhibitions. I know talking to the people up at the NEC at Fab recently was saying that the numbers were still down, and it's still quite hard getting people away from their desks, isn't it? But coming out and meeting people face to face, getting to know people is just so invaluable.
It is. It cannot be replicated, can it? So when you come to an event like this, one of the things we find more than anything is that you are bombarded with so much knowledge. Go to the talks, you meet people over coffee, like you're saying, right? We have so much information bombarded. We're almost a sponge for that information. How do you account for that? How do you take action points? What's your tips for anyone may never have come to an accountant, may never have come to a Fab? How do you go away from this event knowing that you made the most of that opportunity? What's your top tips?
For me, I think I tend to have a bit of a sort of OCD streak in me. So I'm quite methodical in terms of how I'll walk up and down the aisles and try to make sure that I don't miss any stands. I always try and talk to people, because you never know, from little conversations, big opportunities can happen.
Yeah,
And it just sometimes, for me, as a business broker looking to find people that are either looking to buy or sell, it's often just a chance conversation. So I don't rule anybody out or anything in. But what I also try to do as a visitor is not waste people's time. If don't let them try and sell me something that I'm not going to buy, because I'm not, of course, an accountant myself, and it's hard work for people exhibiting on these stands for 2 days. So sometimes it's much easier to tell them quickly, no, this isn't relevant to me, but it's lovely to meet you. Are you having a good show?
Yeah, and I think that's really important, isn't it? To when you think about buying and selling a practice, especially the negotiations we're going through at the moment of looking to buy, and they've all been chance conversations, like you said, right? not once was it a billboard or, you know, maybe the more traditional ways of doing it. It is very much a case of, and even I even say traditional, like it always comes down to having that conversation, doesn't it? And that's what sparks it.
Of course it is, and it's very often that not a lot of people typically get up in the morning and think, today I'm going to go and sell my business.
Yeah.
It happens in a more gradual way. It's usually the result of some longer term thinking and planning and thoughts, but often it's a conversation that will trigger the action. It could be an email from us, it could be a meeting or a call that, you know, I might have spoken to somebody a year ago. Sometimes things just suddenly happen for a reason, don't they?
Yeah, exactly right, exactly right. And especially up that point there about the fact that most people will be looking to sell later down the line. It's because they want to maximize their business, right? They want to
Yeah.
maximize what they've got, and there's always an opportunity to improve and an opportunity to get there. What's your top tips though for finding that right time? Because it's such a balance, isn't it?
Well, it's interesting what you just said there in terms of, for us and in my experience, if anybody is starting to give some thought to an exit, it's really important to plan so far ahead. And a lot of people don't do that. And we work with quite a few sort of external specialists that can help, whether they're sort of ex-accountants that have sold their own business or legal professionals. And the legal side, particularly around due diligence,
Yes.
is really important. And it's often worth just getting people involved early to look at the business, look at the clients, look at the segmentation, look at some of the existing contracts and arrangements. And if you can put things in place at an earlier stage, then when the time comes to sell, the business is often much more attractive and more easily sold.
Yeah. So let's talk some interesting stories then. What's some of the more stranger negotiations you've had to go through? Has there ever been a point where you've had like a non-negotiable that you just thought, that's strange, I've never come across that before? Because we've certainly had a few kind of, well, if you take this on, you're not allowed to move our clients onto a piece of software and them sort of things. Any stories like that you can
I
share?
wouldn't say I've had anything particularly exciting. What we tend to do with our sellers is we sort of run a very loose teaser campaign. So work very hard to not make it obvious who a particular seller is, because
Yeah.
of course if the accountants in towns, they can look at something
Yeah.
sometimes and think, oh well, that will be so and so. So we try to be a little bit clandestine. And when we get initial interest, then we'll go back to our seller and say, so we've got X, Y, and Z firms have indicated they would be interested in a conversation. What does tend to come back, or what I have had one recently, in fact, where the seller said, "Well, I'd be interested in talking to this firm and that firm, but I don't want to talk to them because I don't trust them."
Yeah.
That's obviously always a really important thing.
And that's going to be an important buying decision for them, right? Because if they don't trust them from the offset,
It's never going to work.
yeah. How have you found lately with technology and everything else that we've got? How have you found that when companies acquire one another, that integration, do you find it better than it's ever been before? Because there's now so much choice and so much like vendors out there. Or do you find that it's actually a little bit more restrictive now? Is it a case that you've got to find, you know, you're almost matching, right? There's a QuickBooks only firm and a QuickBooks only firm work together, or how's that landscape been at the moment?
I think it's a very complex landscape, and I suppose there are obviously the key main players in that market, whether that's Sage or Zero and others. They're pretty complementary, and most of the time it isn't too much of an issue. And indeed, some acquirers will be very happy to leave systems as they are anyway. If it's a private equity firm buying the business, they're not necessarily going to say, "Well, we need to migrate everything onto this system."
Yeah, they'll work with it.
I think most acquirers generally tend to take a longer term view that they don't want to upset any apple carts unnecessarily.
Makes sense, doesn't it? Makes sense. Okay, so interesting. This is a question we ask everyone who's sat here, but everyone's an accountant or a bookkeeper, so it'll be interesting what your response to this is. So, what do you love about this industry? What made you decide to help accountants sell to one another? What was it about the accountancy industry that you interested in?
I love people, and I've always enjoyed working as a business broker. And I think what I enjoy the most is putting people together. And having spent, many years myself in the finance and financial recruitment space,
Yeah.
being able to work with people and match people up is a really important skill. And I suppose what sort of attracted me to come into the accounting market as a broker It's quite simply that there is so much opportunity and there is such an active market and there is an enormous amount of consolidation and activity. Private equity businesses, they love accountancy businesses because of the sticky nature of the clients and predictable revenue streams. So it's a really buoyant industry to get into. And, as a businessman, ultimately, I'd rather be involved in something that's buzzing and there's a lot going on than one that's perhaps on the wane.
So maybe that's answers your question for the next one. So what would you change about the industry? What is it, would you want it to be more bubbling or what would you say?
I guess I'm not really probably qualified to say what I would change about it, in truth. I think what would make it easier for me is if I could access and identify those people that want to sell their business and they could approach me. That would be the great thing, because we've always got lots of people that want to buy, lots of buyers, and our challenge, like other brokers, is finding serious sellers that are genuinely looking to do something in the next year, couple of years.
Those sellers that you're looking for, what's your ideal seller? Is it anyone you're interested in, or are you kind of looking at particular practices?
We don't really have an ideal seller because we like to think that we can try and help everybody. So, we'll work with a small owner-operated business that might only, perhaps have 100 clients and perhaps turn over 100, 150,000 or less. Or indeed a business that might just want to sell some of the clients and a block of fees, right the way up through, obviously, to larger multi-partner, multi-million-pound businesses. So we probably haven't got an ideal. I suppose what is ideal is where the seller appreciates the service that we can offer.
Brilliant.
And we're able to work with that seller as a trusted partner, and we can get a good relationship with them from the off and try to understand what they really want to achieve. That's our ideal
solution.
Ideal seller.
I love it. Okay, so AI has been a prevalent talk of everything in this thing at the moment, right? We're always talking about AI, and for us, and our for our podcast, we're talking about it as a force for good. We don't want it to replace jobs. We don't want it to be a negative. What we want it to be is an opportunity to help practices grow or streamline services or wow clients. How do you feel like AI is going to impact your take on it? Because naively looking in, it's like if a practice is going to embrace AI and be more, profitable from there, are the factors going to be higher for them? Should they get a better return out? Is it, if they're looking to sell, is AI a good place to be in, or is it too early to tell?
I'm far from an expert on it. I know that I've recently started to make use of things like ChatGPT myself to help with, basically producing email subject lines and things like that. And it's amazing and it's so clever. And when you start to understand what some of the things it can do, but ultimately for me, it's a source of ideas. From my own point of view, I'm guessing with accountants and with clients, it's really the numbers are the numbers, and it's not necessarily about AI. If a client's got an issue with their numbers in zero not quite balancing with their bank, or they want to understand why their margin isn't what it should be, or how they can increase their profitability, or whatever it is, I'm not sure that AI will do that. And ultimately, it's still going to need somebody to cast their eyes over the figures and the numbers, and to be able to see where the problem is. So I'm sure AI, there's probably somebody would correct me on this and say that AI can do all of these things, but I'm not so sure, because I think accountancy is still, while a lot of it is very much online and very digital now, and it's very easy for people to run their own accounts quite effectively, they still need that expert input and advice from an accountant that wants to help their customers.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I don't think anyone's thinking that AI is just going to completely and utterly just like do it all. It's just interesting to see if that is if you're looking to maximize your sales at the moment, or you're selling for your practice, is it the right time to do it? And I suppose time will tell, right? I think that's what we've got to figure out. So have you got some top tips for anyone looking to sell their practice? Is it invest in the people? Give us a breakdown for it?
The key things are to make sure that your business is in good shape. And to make sure that you're ready and well prepared for a due diligence process. And sometimes it's worth even doing your own due diligence yourself in anticipation of what a buyer is going to come and look at. So you've got to look at things like your legal and financial compliance. You've got to look at, obviously, your software, your systems. You've got to be able to understand how your client base is segmented.
Yep.
Are there any particular high value, high risk clients that could potentially walk, or is a high proportion of your customer base of a certain age that might be retiring soon?
Yeah.
There's all manner of things that you've got to look at. Things like payment history. Are you collecting your money on a regular basis? These are all the things that a buyer will look at within the due diligence. So getting yourself well prepared in advance and going through a checklist, which we can help with. And I would also say, when you are at that point, get your lawyer involved early and make sure you speak to somebody who is an expert in buying and selling businesses. Going to a sort of provincial lawyer that perhaps does wills and estates and divorce and family law and a bit of everything isn't really what you want. You need somebody that can be able to smoothly and seamlessly get to heads of terms, so that they haven't then got to go and unravel everything that you perhaps got wrong.
I guess that's where specialists like you, that's what you can help with, right? Because you can find the right lawyer for the right seller, and that's what you bring to the table.
Yeah, and the other key area, of course, is staff, and looking at your existing workforce, and at what point do you start to communicate with them, and who do you communicate with? Perhaps your key personnel.
Yeah.
Ideally, if you can get them involved early and get them on board early, so they're not kept in the dark for too long, and potentially they get concerned or get itchy feet. And if they're engaged in the process and on board with it and know that their jobs are going to be secure and that they're going to be chupied across in the correct way and their own employment rights aren't going to be affected, that's also really important. And any buyer, again, in terms of their due diligence, is going to be looking carefully at the staff records, the qualifications, because they don't want to take on any particular problems either. So HR and working with an HR consultant, if you haven't got one, is also a really good thing to do, to review all your contracts and make sure that you've got no compliance issues.
Yeah, 100% agree. Yeah, it's what gets messy, isn't it, if you don't look at that. So, look, really enjoyed this conversation. Unfortunately, this is a Pitstop podcast, so we have to keep it quick. But I definitely think we should have another chat with you at some point. I think you've got a lot of outside looking in, almost in a good way, right? Accountants, we love to kind of see what the outside world thinks of us. I think that's what you bring to the table. I love that. So you've got this camera, this camera, this camera. Please plug away. Talk to, where people can find you, what they should be looking for, like what you can do for them. Plug your way. The floor is yours.
Okay. I'm Simon Reed. I'm the MD of Accountants for Sale. We operate nationwide, helping accountants to buy and sell their businesses. Our website is www.accountantsforsale.co.uk, and I can be contacted on email simon@accountantsforsale.co.uk, and I can be called on my mobile pretty much at any time within reason, certainly out of office hours when you might want to speak to me. My mobile is 07770 482 459. I mean, we'd be very, 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 very keen to speak to you and help you. I've hopefully got quite a lot of knowledge and help that I can offer, and people that I can put you in touch with that can help you get to where you want to get to.
I love it. And you're talking to my audience because people are always looking to look at their options, aren't they? So, been a great episode. Thank you so much, Simon. Thank you for sharing us your knowledge, and we will sure to have you on again. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron.
Don't forget, if you want to like, subscribe, and all that sort of stuff, you're already in the right place. We've got more content coming from Accountex 2024 on the way. See you in the next one.